Hey there, everybody. Sinue here, back at it again for another episode of Daily Battlefield Applied with my man here, John. John, will you please say hello?
Good morning, everybody. Afternoon, evening, whenever you may be listening to this. Thank you so very much for joining us today.
Yeah, I look forward to today's conversation, man. We've been talking about it throughout the week since last week's episode. Would you remind our listeners what we talked about last episode very briefly?
Absolutely, yeah. So today we're doing a continuation. We just felt that this was such a great recording or a great message. So we're continuing on last week's. We started with Earl Nightingale's the Strangest Secret. We were listening to that recording, I believe, back in 1956, something like that is what you said. Yep. And so we were able to kind of gloss over some of the key points in last week's discussion, but we just felt it was so densely packed, so much great information, so many things to parse through that it was worthy of an additional day of review and introspection. And so here we are today.
Yeah, I got to tell you, guys, since last week, I've probably listened to that recording, I would say realistically, like another 6 times.
Excellent.
There's a lot to it, and I don't know if you've ever been on a Wikipedia article that you find interesting, and there's all the links to take you to other, sources and so on. With this Strangest Secret playbacks that I've been doing, the points or the nuggets, if you will, that he makes or drops along the way in those 35 minutes lead me to do research on them and learn more about those theories and then concepts and so on. That just there's so much to unpack, as you said earlier, from 35 minutes of Strangest Secret. So
absolutely.
I just want to say, so we wanted to really get into it on the second on this episode again here, because it's just the value is so high that we can't just drop it all in one episode. Actually, it takes more than 2.
I would probably say even more. Absolutely. I mean, I think you could teach like a master class on this recording, to be honest. It's 35 minutes just full of really fantastic time-tested information that could be utilized to make your business better, your life better, just an overall approach to how you're doing things to really he even defines what success is, right, according to what the template that he's working with. So very, very informative stuff here. And I'd say let's just get right into it.
Awesome. Well, actually, you know what? Before we do that,
right.
I just want to ask you a question, if I may.
That's right.
How are you feeling?
How am I feeling today? I should have known that was coming. So I was looking at our wheel, the wheel that we have addressed before in the past, and I'll be honest, today I feel a little confident about my business. I'm at this point by the way, I consider this part of the business, just so that you know, like this podcast, what we're doing has now become incorporated into what I would consider my business. And so love the consistency, love that we've been able to get on here and get these recordings out. As far as everything else going on in my business life, a lot of consistency from a couple of weeks ago, starting with the tiny habits, still executing that, still making sure that minute the feet hit the ground, it's going to be a great day. So reinforcing some of those things that we learned about a couple of weeks ago, and overall feeling good, man. What about yourself? Where are you at?
Well, this is a perfect segue, and I'll tell you how I'm feeling, but this is a perfect segue into the things that I wanted to talk about regarding Strangest Secret. I am feeling a little overwhelmed. I've got a lot of things going on in my own business. I love that you see, the podcast as a business, because what it does is it makes you more serious about learning the things that we speak about, right? And what that does for me, I won't speak for you, but I feel like I can here. What that does for me is it makes me a better professional and, member of my family as well. So it increases my aptitude in different facets of my life, professional and personal, from the things that we're studying as a result of this podcast, and taking it in seriousness as you would a business, and part of your business really tells me that you're making significant effort to be present to show up, to commit, to work on in the background and then on your own time. So that's wonderful, man. And look, at the end of the day, what I value the most about this is it helps two friends make each other better. And if we are so fortunate as to have listeners that are enjoying this and thinking to themselves, holy smokes, I should probably consider that too, or look into that or do more research, and it helps improve them a little bit, that's all just icing on the cake, baby.
Oh, I would have to agree. Part of what I said at the beginning was, to your point, I do think that the effort that you put into a venture will ultimately play a large role as to what you get out of it as well, right? So treating it with that same kind of effort and enthusiasm and professionalism that you would in any other type of business activity, I think can only help you, right? It's part of the whole kind of thing that we're trying to develop here. And to your point, even if nobody else were to listen to this, the idea was how, we've come across a lot of very interesting things, ideas, strategies over the years as entrepreneurs, and being able to, like you said, flesh these out, talk them through, get a different perspective, an alternative perspective, I think is hugely valuable as far as your own personal business, but life as a whole. It kind of gives you a different perspective and another set of eyes to kind of look at the same thing. Always very helpful.
Yeah. Now that I've listened to The Strangest Secret so many times, I hear things and interpret them in what I now would refer to as Nightingale-isms. So, you were talking about the effort or the results of your effort, your output from your input a few moments ago. And that's now for me interpreted as, what am I putting in the ground? What am I putting in my mind? What am I watering? What am I, planting? What am I growing?
Mm-hmm.
Which takes us back to, breaking down Earl Nightingale's the Strangest Secret from do you mind if I start?
Oh, please. No, let's dive right into it. Absolutely.
So I mentioned to you that how I'm feeling plays into, what I take away from this wonderful recording. And the number one thing that I want to remind myself regarding how I'm feeling and what I took away from this recording is you become what you think about. Like, you literally become what you think about. And it has been so impactful for me, even though I've heard this before, but so impactful for me now more than ever, because I used to be very quick to negative thoughts. You've known me for 5 years now, and you always have told me, man, you're really hard on yourself. Like, be more positive and all these things, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I would say, like, oh, I'm just kidding, self-deprecating humor. And for the most part it was, but the power of these words and how I'm thinking, they seep together and they start to intertwine. And the next thing you know, you find yourself having negative thoughts. I was mentioning that in last week's episode. So it's a matter of, for me, being in control of my mind to the degree that I can be aware, and maybe not prevent it, because it takes awareness and effort to get there, but be aware that it's happening so I can put a stop to it immediately.
Dude, it's so we didn't talk about this beforehand, by the way, so just so folks know, but we each made mental notes, or we talked to each other about what we wanted to talk about, but we didn't really talk specifics. And it's so funny that on this second go around, you keyed in on the exact same thing that I keyed in on as well, which was to me kind of going even deeper, right? Because like you said, he stresses the fact that we literally become what we think about, right? One of the quotes in the audio is, we are the sum total of our thoughts. But if we go into a deeper layer, there's an assumption there that you're paying attention to your thoughts. So the very first step that we have to do in this process is become cognitively aware of, what are we thinking? Because to your point, everything that we're thinking will ultimately shape our destiny, who we become, what we do, what we surround ourselves with. And so the very, very first step before we even get too deep into the weeds is becoming aware that your thoughts are important, and then becoming aware of what those thoughts are. And when I heard this recording back 10 years ago or so, that was kind of the very first sort of aha moments of like, oh my gosh, well, what am I thinking about in any given day, at any given moment? Where is my mind at? What am I focusing on? What am I thinking about? Are these good thoughts, bad thoughts? Are they helping me? Are they hurting me? And so, to your point, once you begin to think along those lines, it becomes even more powerful, because you're like, wait a second, what am I sowing and what am I reaping? Right? Another example that he uses, because he says, we are where we are because that is where we really want to be. And so that really, whether we admit it or not, is the actual quote that it says in there as well, whether we admit it or not. So it's kind of a conundrum, because you find yourself in a situation, you're like, well, no, I don't want to be here. I don't want to. Maybe you find yourself in the situation where you're like, well, I didn't necessarily choose to be here. But if you really stop and look at sort of what you've done up to that point, you find that whether we like it or not, kind of our thoughts have taken us in that general direction. So
I want to, what I'm hearing, what I'm visualizing when I hear you speak about that allows me to really let it soak in is, how if you have on a molecular level, certain atoms and molecules, they just don't bind well because they don't bind well because of their properties, right?
mhm.
So there's like Teflon, that chemical that DuPont makes. You put it on a whole bunch of things, your jacket, your shoes, your pants, and it
Frying pans,
it repels everything, like everything, right? That's because at the molecular level, it doesn't let anything attach to itself. Or there's the opposite, something that is very receptive to things attaching to itself. So if you could think of Velcro on a simple manner for me to understand and explain. If you have the mindset for good or bad or neutral thoughts, and you let the wrong thoughts attach to your mindset, it will start to dictate how you act as a person, right? And how you behave and who you associate with and so on. And to prove at least my point that I'm trying to make here is, you could see that on the bigger scale in the saying, show me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are, because
right?
you're going to associate with other like-minded people who you attract and connect with, and do the kinds of things that are to your standard of doing, which are going to lead you to the outcomes in your life which put you where you are today. So if you associate with a bunch of successful people because that's who you like to hang out with and really coalesced with, the likelihood of you looking at yourself and seeing if you're successful and saying yes is higher than if you are associating with a bunch of, vatos or just hoodlums. Or I just I'm thinking of how I grew up, right? Where
Right.
what I saw in
Yeah.
my earlier youth. And you're going to be doing those kinds of activities and probably having the outcomes that those kinds of activities foster.
Well, no, absolutely. I think your environment plays a huge role as to kind of shaping who you are. But to your greater point, even though that was the environment that you were around in, look at where you are, right? At some point, you became aware of certain things and started doing things in a particular way to take things in a different direction, right? You're not in the same place that those people that you originally saw as a youngster are, right? You're in a totally different place.
Absolutely.
Right. So the I cannot kind of get over or stress enough the fact that when he says we must control our thoughts if we are to control our lives, that really struck home with me, because it goes to the very nature of where you started this whole conversation of control. Like, we have to really think about what we think about. And once you start thinking on that level, then to your point, you start analyzing, well, that little joke that I made about myself, or that little thing that happened over there, or these are all sort of little building blocks to kind of help shape who you become and where you go. And so if you can start making those positive building blocks because you're becoming aware of what you're thinking about and putting a stop to the negative and trying to encourage the positive, it can have a profound effect on how your life develops as a whole. It's huge.
So let me ask you a question, and I'll share first if you'd like.
Yeah.
But what you just mentioned right now, in my notes here, I wrote down human beings can alter their lives by altering their thoughts, which
Yeah.
is damn near the same thing you just
Mhm.
noted a moment ago, right? So,
Yep.
and he has a lot of different really good points in those 35 minutes, but at least now it seems for you, both you and I,
We just keyed in on, yeah.
yeah. So, well, I mean, that's literally what he says. The strangest secret is, you become what you think about most of the time, right? So he really elaborates on it, but there's other points as well. So for me, what I am trying to do, okay, so trying, because it's difficult, man. It's actually difficult to be fully aware of your thoughts and what's going on. Go ahead.
Only at the beginning. It's like any habit. This is, as a matter of
Yes.
fact, this is where we could use tiny habits as a kind of a launching point for becoming aware of your thoughts, right? Using trigger,
Good.
things like that. But keep going. Sorry.
Okay. That's actually where I'm going with this.
Okay.
So what have you implemented in your life to help you be aware of your thoughts and how impactful they are on you?
Okay. Where I started all of this years ago, the very first thing I did is whenever I would notice myself like dozing off or kind of going into kind of like a fog, I would try to become conscious of that in that moment. I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly, but inevitably, for example, you'd be driving, and sometimes when you're driving, you just kind of doze off. Your body goes into autopilot, and you're just going where you're going, right? In those instances, I would immediately be like, "No, be present." Like as I noticed, it became something that I wanted to pay attention to, right? So it's all about setting your intention. So the idea would be, I'm going to become aware of what I'm thinking, kind of giving yourself an order, kind of self-talk. We'll get into that one as well down the road. And so once you give yourself an order, now you can become more aware of what is going around that order, right? Am I following that order as instructed? Am I not? Or what am I doing? And so
Right.
that to me became kind of the first step as far as noticing what I was thinking. The second thing is, which was noted by, I think it was Dr. Is it Fogg from Tiny Habits? I actually carried a stone in my pocket.
That's
That was a
nice.
trigger. And anytime I stuck my hand in my pocket to get keys or to get money out or my wallet, whatever, it would remind me. And I had a mantra or a thought of like, be aware of your thoughts. And that was another thing that I started utilizing as like a trigger to slowly begin to become more aware of where my mindset was at any given moment.
So that's from um the motive, the ability, and the prompt
Right,
for
exactly.
for your tiny habit, right?
But this
And
was
the
before
habit,
I read Tiny Habits, right? This was just kind of something that at the time I kind of came up with on my own. Of like, okay, I've heard about triggers. I've heard about trying
yeah,
I didn't know it at the level that we do now after having read the book, you know.
yeah.
But back then it was like, okay, I could utilize some kind of external force, a stone, a rock, a penny, whatever it is,
Mhm.
and then trigger that to. The other one, another good one that I found, whenever I would find like a penny or like a
A
dime or something,
coin or something.
okay, yeah, I made that a point to have like a mantra to say in that moment as well. So the penny would immediately be like, oh, boom, and then think something, whatever it is that the message that you decided for yourself.
Yeah, the only downside with that I see is that finding a coin on the ground is so infrequent that adopting that into an actionable habit is a lot harder with that kind of prompt.
But if you'll believe me, all of a sudden I started finding coins everywhere.
Hey, you know what? I
That's
do
the
believe that.
yeah.
I
So it's
do
kind of
believe
like
that.
it's weird how that works. So all of a
No,
sudden
it's
you
it's
start
not
seeing
it's
more
not weird.
coins because your
That's
mind is
the
keyed in on, and you all of a sudden you see a coin at the
yes.
grocery store, a coin
Yeah.
as you're walking into the office, a coin
Yeah.
as you're going to a showing, and it's like, and then so it's immediately firing off, firing off,
Yeah.
firing off. So yeah.
That is interesting though. Like that's a really good point. I think it does happen, right?
Mhm.
Because now you're looking for it or now you're more aware of it.
Exactly.
Okay, touche, you got me there. So what I was gonna say that has helped me is that feelings wheel that we put together a few podcasts ago.
Yeah.
I guess we should attach it to this one as well.
Yeah. Well,
Or we
just keep.
should
I
just
think we
add,
should have it available at all times. I
yeah,
think it should be on all of them. Yeah.
man, is an awesome wheel. Like what it does for me is it gives me the reminder. So that's my prompt. The reminder
Okay.
when I look at it, the reminder to be more specific in terms of my feeling, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I'm feeling one kind of way or another, I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. This feels good. This doesn't feel good. This feels neutral. I
Hmm.
caught that. Why am I feeling this way right now?
Hmm.
And what am I doing to propagate that or to stop that? Right. So if I can understand what that is, and I'm feeling good, for example, about something work related, and I'm being productive, and I'm having a great day, and I'm noticing that, and I catch it, and I make a note of it, it's going to be easier to replicate that emotion later on in the future because I was aware of the things that brought me those emotions, and I can take more control over my emotions to replicate them in the future with the
Hmm.
actions that brought me to those emotions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
So
mean,
it's just the specification is what I'm trying to say.
I know, and I think that's great because to to your point, sometimes I think, especially with our feelings, we tend to be very general: happy, sad, angry, mad, whatever.
Yeah.
And so when you really dig into like, well, what am I? I'm angry, but what is it? Well, it's actually more like frustration. And it's actually
Mhm.
more like I feel like I wasn't validated. Like I worked really hard and it was kind of ignored. So when
Yeah.
you dig into and that helps you kind of, okay, now I can kind of sort through that. And but to your greater point, becoming aware of your emotions is kind of akin to becoming aware of your thoughts, because it's like, well, why am I feeling this way? What thoughts brought me to feel
Yeah.
this way?
Of course.
Because your mind kind of will do these mental gymnastics to get you to where
Oh man,
right.
seriously, to get you to believe like
Mhm.
blatant lies.
And
Yeah,
so
it's so crazy. That's what it's unfortunate that the person in the world that we're most okay lying to is yourself.
well, you're with you all the
A lot of
time.
people, a lot of
Yeah.
people.
Hmm.
Anyhow, so yeah, man, look, at the end of the day, I got to tell you, there's more to it than what we've discussed in the short amount of time that we have regarding the benefits of and the points of listening to The Strangest Secret from Earl Nightingale. So we're gonna wrap it up here because we could
Yeah.
keep going. We really can. Um,
Don't
but
test us.
what's that?
I said, don't test us. We will.
Yeah, for real. And you should. And I'll continue listening to it, and I'm sure you will too. And I
Yeah.
think anybody that comes across it should throw it into the rotation, just like they play that Tupac jam every so often.
Well, I mean, repetition is key. What we're to your point of being a reflection of your surroundings. If you're around this recording a lot, I mean, I don't know if this has happened to you. After a while, I can actually hear Earl's voice in my head. Like you said, Earlisms earlier.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
can actually
yeah.
hear the gentleman's voice in my head, kind of the tone, the cadence, the delivery. And so as you immerse yourself in the material, you begin to have a different type of relationship with that material. It becomes more familiar, and you hear different. I mean, even now, like you said, you've heard it 6 times. I'm sure at every listening, something else sticks out of like, oh, that's a little gem right there that I had not heard about, or I hadn't paid attention to earlier. That really kind of popped out this time. And so,
Man, it's
it's
true. I wish I had spent my youth memorizing these lyrics rather than all the verses to hit them up.
I mean, balance, right? Balance. So the idea would be well, now that you have it, now you can memorize these lyrics, bless you. That could be
Well,
something that you could do.
yeah, you know what? You're right. Marcus Aurelius, and one of the things that one of the points in meditations was, you know, take your life to where you are right now, and then realize that you can now start from here. You still have the
Right.
rest of your life, right?
Hmm.
And now, of course, I paraphrase that like significantly,
Well,
but
some people never get there is the point, right? Some people will never get to that point where they're willing to your point, take the veil off, not lie to yourself, and really look at what's kind of moving and shaking to make you feel and do the things that you do. And so
I
if you
feel
get if you
personally attacked.
but if you do get there, then that's a great starting point. And it
Yeah,
doesn't matter when you
absolutely.
get there, start.
Yeah, that's right. Start one bite at a time. That's how you eat the elephant.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, hey, John, I appreciate you jumping on the pod with me this week.
Absolutely,
We should
sir.
probably talk about meditations one of these days. We'll get into that. How about that?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, a little Easter egg. I love it.
All right, my friend. Until next time.
All right, sir, you have yourself a great day. We'll see you
You
on
as
the next one.
well. Bye bye.